It's no secret that our human abilities to complete cognitive tasks tends to degrade as we get into old age. But at what age does this really have a significant effect, specifically on our skills in gaming? While there are some Fortnite players that have the belief that at the age of 18 they'll become washed up due to old age, there's actually no scientific evidence to support this theory. It was my birthday a month ago, and I turned 29 years old, and it got me thinking, fuck, I'm getting old. How many years of gaming do I have left before I'm a washed up old man? So I got to doing some research. The first thing I wanted to look at was the average age of professional gamers in different shooter games. The numbers were actually not as consistent as I first thought they'd be. The average age of a pro player in Fortnite is 17, for Apex Legends it's 21, Valorant 21, Overwatch 22, Counter-Strike 23, and for Quake it's a surprising 29 years old. But why do these numbers vary so much between these games? Well, I think it's fairly obvious that some of these games just appeal to younger audiences. Particularly a game like Fortnite with its cartoonish art style and never failing to keep up with modern trends tends to attract a lot more young players. Whereas a game like Quake, which is now part of a genre known as the boomer shooter, first released in 1996, is of course going to mostly appeal to older gamers. People around my age that have been there since its release and played it growing up. One of the most notable Quake pros is a player named Rafa. He is currently 35 years old and still competes at the highest level with some extremely impressive placements in tournaments. Now, like I said, Quake is a boomer shooter. I'm sure if it had the same appeal to young players as a game like Fortnite, then by now we would have seen some younger, more genetically gifted freaks that would be able to come through and dethrone these players like Rafa. But that's no discredit to Rafa. He can clearly play at an incredibly high level even at his age. So how does he still do it at the age of 35? Well, during my research I stumbled upon this Reddit post talking about these older players dominating in the Quake Pro scene and asking how is it even possible. It says, the question is, reaction time drops off at the age of 24. How are the elite top level players still so good at that age? It's like watching a 13-year-old cracked out on Adderall. Are they just genetic freaks? And the truth of it is, genetics play a massive part in how good any given person is at gaming. The best players in the world at any game are always genetically gifted. They have an ability to learn and master skills required a lot faster than the average player. Now, what about the reaction time decreasing after the age of 24? Well, according to this article from the National Library of Human Medicine, reaction times actually tend to peak at the age of 24, then gradually decrease after that age, but only by about 2 to 6 milliseconds per decade. So worst case scenario is you drop 6 milliseconds of reaction time in 10 years. Now this study was not done on gamers. I can guarantee that the declines for most gamers would be lower than the average person. And these decreases are just very insignificant. Myself at the age of 29 can still hit consistent 160 millisecond reaction times, which is a lot faster than the average person at any age. What is also interesting to note is that this study was done with a variety of tasks involving reaction time and quick decision making. And they found that the younger people on average reacted faster. For tasks in which performance was governed by a speed accuracy trade-off, the younger people appear to make a balance of speed and accuracy in a way that achieves a high rate of correct responses, whereas the older adults reportedly focused on minimizing errors at the cost of being slower. Now for myself, I'm definitely more accurate than when I was younger. Of course, I'm only going to get better if I'm still playing and practicing. I've practiced and learned better aiming habits over the years. But I found when I was younger I'd be more likely to go for a quick flashy flick when seeing my target rather than taking my time to land the shot. And this can translate differently into different games. In a game where you are, say, doing some long range sniping, taking a little more time to achieve a higher number of hits is definitely going to be the more logical way to go about it. But for a game like Fortnite, being faster than your opponent is often going to win you the fight. I think there is a common misconception that after a certain age, your reaction time and gaming skills in general will just fall off a cliff, which is absolutely not the case. But it's undeniable, the large majority of high-level players across all games are quite young. Well, games are evolving. If I think back to when I was 15 years old playing Call of Duty, the average player at the time was just super casual and not very good. It was very easy for players like myself that invested a bit more time and had a bit more skill to absolutely dominate the general player base. There was no ranked modes and esports was nothing like it is today. There was just no incentive for the average player to get better at the game that they just played for fun and nothing more. The esports industry has changed the way people play games today. There are so many young players that dream of being the next big esports star or massively popular streamer, and you can't blame them. It's the dream job for a lot of kids these days. Play your favorite video game and make a shitload of money in the process. It leads to these young players investing more time and practice than ever before to try to achieve this goal. It's a legitimate career path these days. There are more and more gamers every year as the industry grows and evolves, and more avenues for learning. These new young players come in and they learn from the older pro players and coaches, and the cycle repeats. The young, fresh players will always have that advantage. And as for these younger players that do make that dream come true, a lot of them tend to retire fairly early. It's a young man's game. They make a lot of money from playing pro, streaming, and other social media platforms that they often realize that practicing that game they once loved for 12 hours a day just to keep that edge at the highest level just isn't what they want to do anymore. The drive and hunger diminishes as they grow older, and they often retire to just being a streamer or going back to their roots and playing the game for the enjoyment of it. I think at the end of the day, the reason we see more young pro players at the high level is a combination of all the things I've just spoken about, but also that teenagers and kids just have more time and less responsibilities. These young kids are playing these games at the peak of their brain's development. The brain's developing basic motor skills that they'll be using for the rest of their lives, and they're out here cranking 90s for 12 hours a day. Particularly for a game like Fortnite, there is no risk for a 13-year-old to abandon all other obligations to practice Fortnite and try and make a living off of it. But for someone in their mid to late 20s, it's just not the same.